the August 2021 newsletter. Hello, everyone. We are at the end of another month, or is it the beginning of another one? I'm so confused. I guess it could actually be both. Anyway, I hope you made it through hot July without any sunburn or dehydration. Me, I got a bit of sun, no burn. I played some fairly poor disc golf, but I continued on my diet track and I continue to hang out at like that 175-pound mark, 15 pounds down from March. A reminder, no sugar, no carbs, 1,700 calories a day. I have to admit that I cheated some days here and there, but nothing that took me off track. I'm headed to Pennsylvania on August 2nd to see my dad. I'm flying. Yes, flying. I'm only going to be there 9 days, and I can stuff everything I need in either my computer bag or suitcase. So I'll just sit back and let someone else do the driving, flying. Dad, he's been under the weather. I'm not sure how much he'd want me to say, but he's had a stomach thing going on. Not cancer. Nothing like that, but he seems to have to really watch what he eats. Hey, he's 84. What are you going to do? So pretty much the same old, same old. Let's start where I usually do, upcoming episodes. August 6th, Crystal Bailey. Others we are working on, Jennifer Perry, Leanne Hosberg, Michael Van Zant, Irma Merkician, and a few others. In addition, given that this is August, update episode number 9 will be out the last Friday of the month. Then the first Friday of September, we will celebrate the 5-year anniversary of Unfound by replaying the first episode, The Disappearance of Susie Lyle. I just spoke to her mother, Mary, within the past week, coincidentally. Let's move on to the items for this newsletter. Someone's birthday. Yes, you guessed it, it's mine. Today, August 1st, I'm 51. And yes, at this age, my hair is still real. And yes, that's my real hair color that you see during the live show. I'm very fortunate. August 1st, 1970 was a Saturday. I was born in the morning. The only sibling of mine that got to see me before I was whisked away to be adopted was my brother Brian, who now lives about 20 minutes from me in Largo, Florida. He and I, along with my sister and other brother, didn't reconnect until April of 1994. I don't believe in astrology, but I am certainly a Leo. In addition, it's very strange, but I've tended to be drawn toward women who are also Leos, even though I didn't know they were Leos at the time. August 4th, July 31st, August 12th, August 7th. Those are some birthdays of women I've dated. The number is higher than odds would predict. Very strange. Having a birthday on August 1st is a nice way to break up the summer. Memorial Day, then a month passes, and July 4th is here. Then another month passes, and August 1st is here. Then another month passes, and Labor Day is here. Very rhythmic. FOIAs. The topic comes up once in a while. I get emails asking me about them. For example, Ed, do you ever file for any? And I think there's a belief among the true crime audience as a whole that requesting information from police departments is just standard practice for hosts. Well, it may be for other hosts. I've heard that Marissa at The Vanished requires FOIAs quite a bit, or requests FOIAs quite a bit. Once again, that's what I've heard. I don't know that for a fact. I've never spoken to her ever about any topic. No calls, no texts, no emails. I don't know her at all. But this is what people who also listen to her podcast have told me. For me, FOIAs, for the most part, bring in too much of a variable into trying to conduct the program the way I do. I don't like to work at the speed of other people, hence my frustration doing filmmaking 15 years ago. None of these law enforcement agencies care if Unfound ever makes another episode. Thus, their concern about getting paperwork to me in a timely fashion is quite low, if not non-existent. However, there are exceptions, which I will discuss in a moment. Also, even if I get the paperwork from a police department, there's no guarantee what it will say. No guarantee it will be helpful. Really, I could get 100 pages and they all be blacked out. I will even go as far as to admit that if I was guaranteed finding out new helpful information the guest doesn't know or can't tell me, then I would file for a FOIA in almost every case we cover. But of course, there is no guarantee on that. In fact, my experience with most of the FOIAs I've filed over the past 5 years is they usually tell you nothing new. Then there's the cost and everything else. It's just too much to manage and plan for when doing a weekly podcast the way Unfound does it. But probably the most overriding point is that really the guests are just better sources of information than FOIAs are in most situations. Once again, judging what guests have told me, then looking at the FOIAs I've filed for a few of Unfound's disappearances, the guests just know more. They can tell me where they got their information. They can send me links and pictures and copies of conversations, stuff that would never ever be in a Freedom of Information Act request response. Never. However, there are exceptions, and given that I listed her name above, I don't mind now revealing a bit more about the 628-page FOIA I requested. I've mentioned it in the last couple of live shows. A few months ago, I found out about the disappearance of Jennifer Perry. She went missing on July 30th, 1993. Yes, we just passed the 28-year mark. What's interesting about this is that this is the kind of case I usually don't cover. Why? Young person last seen by a parent. I've talked at length about why these kinds of scenarios scare me as a true crime host, and I'm not going to go over all that now. Yet there was something about the disappearance that I found and still find compelling. Jennifer disappeared from Marathon, Florida, which is way out there close to Key West, meaning there are only so many places she could have gone if she ran away. The area is essentially an island. Or if somebody murdered her, the area isn't that big, and most likely Jennifer is buried somewhere very close. In addition, Jennifer's mother was not alone in last seeing her. Jennifer's brother, who was 9 at the time, was also with his mother and saw Jennifer dart off. This then lends more credibility to the mother's story. I've spoken to her, the brother, and Jennifer's sister, by the way. On a whim, I decided that maybe it was time to file a FOIA again. I hadn't done one in a while. However, a listener had recently filed one for Rebecca Gary's case, and what she received in return has opened up some new possibilities in that investigation. So that was on my mind. I contacted Monroe County, which is where Marathon, Florida is. A person got back to me stating that the file is 620 pages, and sure, I can have it. It was that easy. I now have the file in my possession, and I've also sent it to Jennifer's 3 family members. But really, getting FOIAs is not usually this easy. It doesn't happen this fast, and usually they don't reveal as much information as is contained in these 600-plus pages. Now, granted, many of the pages in the Perry file are duplicates. Still, I would say 300 pages have important data, and that's way more than I would have ever suspected. I thought Jennifer's file would be maybe 30 pages and nowhere close to 600 or even 300 or even 100. You just never know. I hope to interview Jennifer's mother, sister, and brother at some point soon, with the episode hopefully coming out in September. As if you don't already know, the episode will be long. Next topic, Noah Davis. This was breaking news on July 28th, 2021. In fact, it was such breaking news that I had started this newsletter before the news broke. That's how new it is, and it gives me another topic to include here. Noah Davis's remains were identified in July 2021, the key word being identified. Actually, someone came upon them way back in 2019. Yes, before Unfound ever covered his disappearance. In addition, the remains were not far from his uncle's, where he was last seen walking away. How far away? No more than a couple miles. It seems, as I kind of predicted, that there was no foul play despite all the sensationalism that has surrounded his disappearance since 2014. Noah shot up, walked off, and overdosed, and died. Maybe you can already see where I'm going to go with this. First, why did it take so long to identify Noah? Think about it. How many other missing men can there be in the Ringgold, Georgia area? Not many, if any. So even without DNA, you would think a solid identification could have been made due to the clothes found clothes found, dental records, etc. But that didn't happen. In fact, my understanding is that no one in Noah's family even knew remains had been found until a few days ago. Why did the sheriff's office not tell them since 2019? I don't know. Second, we have another instance where DNA testing took a long time. Over 2 years to get results. What the heck is going on? Once again, I don't know. Third, and this is the major topic for this section, Noah's case shows how families must be very particular about which member they pick to represent them. There's no doubt in my mind that the public perception of Noah's disappearance went off the rails from the very start in 2014 for one reason: Josh Wright. For the record, I have never thought Josh harmed Noah. I've never thought Josh covered anything up. I've never thought that Josh was trying to intentionally steer the investigation this way or that. In fact, I happen to believe Josh had very good intentions from day one. The problem: good intentions aren't good enough. The fact is that Josh didn't have his own life together enough to even think about making himself the point person on Noah's disappearance. Remember, he was in jail when Noah went missing. Josh had drug problems. He could never seem to answer questions with straight answers. In addition, every question asked of him would always seem to come back to him talking about himself and not about Noah. To be truthful, that last point is probably why so many were suspicious of Josh. Josh was paranoid. He chased every ghost out there. And most importantly, he never took good advice given to him by people like Marissa at The Vanished and John Lorden at Brain Scratch, who know what they're talking about. Josh contacted me after Noah's episode came out to tell me how many lies Jason Stevens told. I responded to Josh by telling him that I couldn't interview him because I've seen his act and he's a horrible guest. Then I blocked him. So I will write it again or say it again. In retrospect, and as I kind of suspected all along, Noah's disappearance was fairly straightforward. But I believe with 100% certainty that it got all crazy with all theories and finger-pointing due to one person, Josh Wright. Not intentionally, but because he had no idea what he was doing, and his demons and pride and ego and everything else wouldn't allow him to give someone else the reins. Families don't do this. If you have a disappearance happen and one of your ne'er-do-wells decides he wants to handle everything, lock him in a closet, handcuff him to a radiator, pay for him to take an around-the-world cruise for the next 10 years or something. But seriously, do not allow him to represent you. Overall, I think we can say that Noah's disappearance is essentially a walk-off caused by a drug addiction, which I got to say is pretty close to what I thought wrote in the Patreon blog back in January. Although I wrote that I was open to the idea that Noah overdosed on his own and somebody covered it up, it doesn't seem that's what happened. I would still like to know how the remains were found and why it took so long to determine they were Noah's. I will keep you posted if I find answers to these questions and any others. Next topic, Austin Pivo. The trial for at least one of the suspects starts tomorrow, August 2nd, 2021. As I find out information regarding how it's going, I will let all of you know in the Facebook group and elsewhere. My biggest question concerning Austin's murder is why it happened in the first place. Other upcoming trials. We have a bunch of them. Here's the list in no particular order with the victims' names. Janelle Matthews, Unique Harris, Alyssa Turney, Kamisha Hollis, Zoe Campos, Tyler North, Jonathan Estes for the machinery theft, not the disappearance, Andrea Bowman. Did I miss any? I'll say them again if you'd like to write them down. Janelle Matthews, Unique Harris, Alyssa Turney, Kamisha Hollis, Zoe Campos, Tyler North, Jonathan Estes, Andrea Bowman. What about Tom Brown's grand jury? I have to say I'm not convinced it's ever going to happen. There's nothing on the docket in Hemphill County or anywhere else. I continue to believe the final word on this case was made during that meeting in August 2019. Next topic, Toby Anderson. As I stated on the most recent Unfound Live Show from July 28th, you should all be keeping your eyes peeled for some possible new developments. Denise McGarity, the guest for Toby's episode, has kept me updated on some possible new evidence. That's all I can really say right now. She has posted some things on her Facebook page, but nothing specific yet. Thus, I feel like I can't be totally transparent at this point either. In addition, I'm very interested in covering a disappearance that could be connected to Toby's, but I've not heard anything back from that prospective guest yet. Like I said, keep your eyes peeled. It could end up being something, it could end up being nothing. But this is why I write this newsletter, to keep you all informed. Next topic for this August 2021 newsletter, Unfound Now. Have you watched the most recent one concerning Candy Gonzalez? I hope you have. If you haven't, go do so right now, please. Maybe it's a good time to refresh everyone's memory on how I pick the disappearances that I do for Unfound Now. It's actually more complicated than you might imagine. After this explanation, I will offer up some additional commentary on Candy's case specifically. First, you must know that the reasons I started Unfound were twofold. Number one, bring additional attention to very recent disappearances. And number two, use these cases as ways to teach the public about disappearances in general. So it's not enough for a disappearance to just be recent. There must be enough information out there to get a good idea of what the circumstances actually were. And it's also helpful if searches have been done and statements have been made by law enforcement and the family. Why? Because to be able to teach the public, there has to be information to cite. Likewise, it's not enough that a disappearance has had a lot of coverage if it happened like 9 months ago. If that's the situation, I might as well wait, and if the disappearance isn't solved by the year-old mark, I can make a full episode of that disappearance. Meaning, really, there aren't a ton of disappearances that fall into the Unfound Now criteria. Sure, lots of recent disappearances, but many don't have a ton of information out in the public yet. But also, there are many cases with a lot of information out in the public, but the date is getting very close to the time when I would start considering them for a Friday episode. It's a very, very fine line. Second, once I've found a list of disappearances that fit the strict criteria, I read about them and determine which is best for teaching missing persons theory. And that can take some time as well, because I try to make the lessons a bit different for every Unfound Now episode. I don't want to talk about the same principles over and over and over again. Why? Because all theories cannot be contained within just one case. Not even disappearances as complex as Dorian Myers or Cameron Remmers contain everything the public needs to know about disappearances as a whole. Thus, third, I will go back to some of the most recent Unfound Nows and see what the principles were, and I will look for a disappearance that can be used to teach different points from those others. Then a disappearance is picked, and for July, that ended up being Candy Gonzalez's. So allow me to write a bit about her case. Once again, though, go to Unfound's YouTube channel and watch the 40-minute video. When I watch Candy running down into that creek bed, I also see Keith Fetter, Renee Lamanna, Claudia Wells. These disappearances are almost 100% like Candy's. Yet when I see Candy running down into that creek bed, I also think about Chris Sanders, Joshua Guimond, Shanna Boydo, Eric Alvarado, and a whole bunch of others. I open my mind to the possibility that all of these people really did disappear. I open my mind to the possibility that all of these people really did disappear just like Candy did, even though the circumstances of them kind of point more toward foul play. Why do I do that? Because Candy's circumstances show how quickly a person's mental state can change. That was one of the points from the Unfound Now episode. In fact, I would say it's the main one. Anybody can have some kind of panic attack, bipolar affliction, mental fugue at any time. And before we start to form our theories, we must look at the totality of the circumstances, not just one small part. I hope you are all learning something from these monthly videos. Next Topic, speaking engagements. I am finally making this happen again after having to wait over a year due to COVID. Really, it seems like yesterday I had some events planned for April and May of 2020. Then boom, March 2020, COVID. I can only imagine how many schools I would have spoken at by now if the pandemic hadn't occurred. 7, 10, 12, 15, who knows? Now, though, I get to make up for the lost time. So where will I be showing up to speak to criminal justice majors? First, on Tuesday, October 12th, I will be speaking to 2 classes at Northwestern State University and Natchitoches, Louisiana. I hope I didn't say that too badly. Each session will be 75 minutes long, meaning I will probably do an hour of speaking, followed by 15 minutes of questions from the students. The second engagement will be Thursday, November 4th, down in Davie, Florida at Nova Southeastern University. Yep, you guessed it, for a couple of Dr. Telesco's classes. I'm not sure what the lengths of those presentations will be. Whatever the situation, I'll be prepared. Your next question, what will you be talking about? What exactly will you be showing/teaching these students? Well, I'm glad you asked. The main goal is to put those first nuggets of truth about disappearances in their heads before they get jaded once they start their work in law enforcement. I want them to remember what I tell them about how families feel ignored, how police don't take disappearances seriously, how oftentimes the important things are missed early on. It will all be in there. Well, as much as I can pack into an hour. I will do this by using some of Unfound's disappearances as examples. For example, I'm sure I will have a section on corruption. So I'll talk a bit about the disappearances of Robin Abrams and Megan Lancaster. I'm sure relationships being the major cause of disappearances will be a topic. Thus, I am sure I will go over the details of Angela Green's and Zoe Campos' disappearances. In that category, I have a lot of choices. Another topic will be addiction. Some of the disappearances on that topic will be Noah Davis's, especially since his remains were recently identified. And Crystal Morrison's would probably be a good one too, given that I originally thought she was murdered, but we now know she wasn't. The overarching theme will be that although technology has changed over the last 50 years, law enforcement's attitude toward disappearances is still the same. Certain demographics, children, get all the attention, and everybody else is left wondering if they'll ever get a call back. That has to change, and I want to be the leader of that effort. All of this will be presented to the students in a PowerPoint presentation with me being there in the flesh in front of them. So I'll be driving to Louisiana, then I'll be driving down to Davie. I anticipate both presentations will be videoed by me, and excerpts will be made available on Unfound's YouTube channel. The video will also be sent to prospective schools. Will I be nervous? Probably. But really, having been a performer at one time, being that I've done the live show for almost 4 years, being that I will practice beforehand, being that I know the material as well as anyone on this earth, being that I know this is absolutely the correct direction Unfound needs to go, I'll be fine. Not to mention, I do like to talk. That's genetic. What I want Unfound to eventually be is an all-encompassing source for all information regarding disappearances. I want to do the Friday episodes. I want to go to schools to speak. And eventually, when a disappearance makes national news, I want the 24/7 news channels to contact me about speaking to their audiences about the facts and what they could mean. Why me? Why Unfound? Because the people who currently do it don't know what they're talking about. They may be experienced investigators, they may be experienced law enforcement officers, they may be nice people, but they have virtually no experience with long-term disappearance cases like I do. They just don't. Right now, when disappearances make national news, the public is not getting the correct information. That has to change. And through that change, by the public becoming more educated, by future law enforcement officers becoming more educated, more disappearances will be solved in a timely manner. It's going to take time, but the path is clear. That's all I have for this month. Thanks for listening.